Welcome to Clutch or Click, the podcast where gaming meets passion, chaos, and straight up honest takes. Hosted by Melch, Matt Ghosty, and Virgo, we dive deep into the worlds, mechanics, and madness of the games that keep us up way too late.
What's up, guys? Matt goes to here. So, our recent obsession, as it seems to be common with the rest of the internet, even inserting itself into Game of the Year conversations, which we haven't seen since like 2016 Overwatch, is Arc Raiders from Embark Studios, the makers of the finals. If you guys have played that, Virgo is a big fan. My man keeps putting me on, dragging me into match after match of that game, and it is very addicting. Embark is from former DICE developers, probably know them from Battlefield and Battlefront 2. So, really amazing developers, and they kind of splintered off on their own. Made this awesome game called The Finals, where it's just tons of destruction in this like arena-based objective combat with wacky costumes, super like inventive, creative gameplay that honestly not really any other multiplayer shooters kind of replicate, in my opinion. Um, so when they announced Arc Raiders, me and Virgo were pretty stoked because we were already fans of the finals and we really liked Embark. And me personally, I've been waiting for the extraction shooter genre to finally get a chance to jump to consoles in a big way and really like kind of loop in more of the broader gaming conversation. And lo and behold, game comes out and it takes over. I don't know if you want to take it away, Nelch, your experiences so far, but I know the three of us have just been playing it tons.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a huge shooter fan, really didn't play any in the past, but hopping into this one midweek this week, it's been all I can really play, you know? It's just been a blast from the visuals to seeing the scenery around me and just like the whole uniqueness of the whole gameplay and PvP versus PvE aspect. I've been able to kill every boss, every enemy except for the queen so far, so I've had a huge blast with just like slowly trying to advance to the different enemies and really progress my loot system, my weapons to be able to do those things. And I'm really looking forward to what they have to come because with the roadmap already released and so many huge things yet to come and in process of being made right now, I cannot wait to see what they have to say.
I mean, we only had let's call it this would be the third option when it comes to the extraction shooter genre in popular case. So we had Tarkov, which is the long-standing grandfather of the genre, and then we had the young hopeful that known as Delta Force that kind of fell flat, and then now here we have Arc Raiders that's was also the young hopeful, and as we're seeing, really is coming through strong. Um,
I think what's really interesting about Arc Raiders is so many extraction shooters have seen Tarkov and been like, that's a really great game. We're going to make a game that is basically Tarkov, just like for some other audience, maybe, right? Like you play Delta Force, it looks, it feels, it plays a lot like Tarkov. It's looting systems, it's shooting mechanics, all that stuff. Same thing with something like Arena Breakout. And the only game that's like really tried to break into the mainstream that has done extraction shooters differently is Call of Duty DMZ, which we know kind of fell flat, even though it did gain somewhat of a significant player base. Most mainstream players of COD did not enjoy it. Um, and so the genre's just kind of been waiting for something. And what I found super cool about Arc Raiders hopping in is like, this is Arc Raiders. This is not Tarkov. This isn't a first person shooter, number one. There isn't tons and tons of like loot and things to put on your guns and like ergonomic mechanics and all these hidden stats, and you need to level up your characters and build out your hideout like and just spend 24/7 on this game. I'm like, I like to play games, but I don't have the time or the energy anymore to just sit on one game and miss out on other things. I would much rather have a game that feels like it wants me to play more, not like it's forcing me to play more. If that makes sense. I don't know if you guys have kind of experienced something similar.
Yeah, no,
yeah, I think
I totally
yeah,
agree with that actually. I think it's The cool thing about arc raiders is that if you wanna have that grindy aspect, it's there for you, and you can, especially with the introduction of almost this prestige system, which allows you to use all of these excess resources and put it towards something bigger, which will overall reset your stash and your loadout and really put you back, but it gives you an option to really grind further and have something to fully upgrade your account in the future with, like, cosmetics and really upgrading your base stats. So it's there for that person that wants to go and grind, but also it's not needed for the casual player or the person who wants to go and do a couple runs when they get home from work every night, you know? It has that simplicity aspect while still offering something more advanced for those people that are really into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I definitely probably represent the most, I mean, compared to you two, the most casual player bases when it comes to gaming. So I've been really enjoying the fact that I don't have to dive in deep into gun types, ammo types, adding different gun attachments, having to know, yes, obviously, if I want to jump deep into the lore, into jumping deep into what you call arc weaknesses, how to fight each arc, I can, but also I can hop into every match with a free loadout and generally have a pretty good time with things.
Speaking of the free loadouts, I think it's been a little controversial that you can just take one in like free whenever you want. There's no cooldown, or there's no like separate character that you take in, like a scav in Tarkov, that you like don't worry about losing. And I think I was really smart from a developer perspective because like so many people, especially on console, are going to be experiencing extraction shooters for the first time. And like the number one thing people say about extraction shooters is they hate the negative progression. They hate like building up their character, getting all this stuff, and then being forced to take in like things that cost money or cost them time to get into a game and then losing it. And kind of teaching people that it's not that big of a deal to lose your gear. And like that's part of the game, it's part of the fun. And by doing that, by giving them free letouts, like for me, there's so many little things in this game. That being like example number one that I'm like, this is so smart. Like another one was them deciding to go with like these AI controlled robots that aren't humanoid
Mhm.
and instead going for like a spider like aesthetic ish. Genius. Like it's just so smart that like something most of us wouldn't think of, but like it differentiates itself in such an interesting and unique way that it's not like, oh, the weak spot is the head. I've done this before and like, oh, this guy has more body armor than this one. Like things like that just make it such a fresh experience that has been so cool to see each thing because it genuinely feels new in such an awesome way to be experiencing like this world that they built out for all their players.
Oh yeah, it's going to be extremely exciting because we're talking, like as you said, indicated spiders, but I'm thinking just insectoids in general, which definitely plays into, I think, the lore of the arc. We've seen the leaper, which definitely gives off, jumping spider type vibes. The fireball and the, I don't know, I'm calling it a roly poly, but like that even lends itself to, these being insectoids. The queen obviously looking like, a massive spider. And I would be curious if that's in fact, like this is just a theory that they're in fact going towards insectoids. If we see, obviously we have stuff like the wasp and the hornet, if they continue down that sort of path. And I mean, we're getting uh, two new archetypes, I think come November, right? And then seeing if that continues, do we see six legs? Do we see more armor? Do we see stuff like, that might resemble heavy armored of like a rhinoceros beetle or something like that? And then you have to, because like it would make sense based on the joints being the weak points and not the head or like, stuff like that. So definitely curious to see how that evolves and what they continue to do with their theming for enemies. And do they at some point go down the possible humanoid route? Because I mean, they've got a 10-year plan for this stuff. So already seeing two new archetypes within the first month.
Yeah, I mean, I think that brings up a really good point. You know, you kind of think of these enemies that are almost hyper realistic, considering this is only about like 150 years into the future, and we already see so many drones nowadays and these robots with built by AI that are actually just like hyper realistic to humans. You know, you never know what they're gonna throw at us, and that's I think is a really interesting part of it. And one of those things that was really unique about them is that these AIs that they have controlling the robots they actually utilize machine learning, which I thought was super interesting because you're not gonna run into something that's too stupid for it to be able to figure out that you're in a building, or it's, like, not gonna chase you down or know that it's done damage to you. I thought that was really interesting because you can no longer just get away with cheesing them a little bit, you know? Eventually, they're gonna figure it out, like, if you're sitting on top of one of these drones and flying around on the map, it'll eventually figure out how to flip over, and we've already seen that in a couple of clips recently, over the past couple weeks, and I thought that was really cool. It doesn't give you that, like, simple stylistic approach that we've seen in past games where people can get away with, like, playing a little building or little corner in order to kill these giant robots, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, like, it just ties in so well to, like, not having humanoid robots to fight because, like, inherently, any of us who've played a lot of video games, like, grew up playing Call of Duty, Halo, whatever, like, all of the enemies in those games are, like, 99% of them are humanoid to some degree. Like, they have legs, they have arms, they're shooting weapons at us, and you, like, kinda understand inherently what the strengths and weaknesses of them are because you as the player tend to have the same strengths and weaknesses. But making things like the leaper that, like, can just cross the whole map in, like, one jump, and you see it coming at you, and you're like, "Oh, I'm so screwed right now," and, like, "I did not expect this to happen." Or, like, the Rocketeer, and, like, there was a match that me and Virgo were in, like, day 1, where I didn't even shoot at a Rocketeer, I kid you not, and it saw me, and I felt so cooked.
Mhm.
And, like, I've played a lot of shooters in my life, and I was like, I don't know what to do, like, I can't hide, like, it's flying after me, like, all these things. Like, that emergent gameplay, I think is gonna carry this game so far because we hear so often in marketing, like, no two runs are ever the same. You know, it's all about the storylines. But like what the developers don't tell you is that's hard to make. Like it's not just as simple as making a battle royale and then like it'll just have these emergent storylines. It doesn't always happen. We see that a lot. And something that was really special about the finals that is obviously carried over to Arc Raiders is just this idea of making a really interesting sandbox for the players to do stupid, creative, fun stuff and then tell their friends about it. And then their friends go, wait a minute, you can do that in that game? Like, you know, we have videos of people riding the arc. We have videos of people like teaming up with one another and then betraying them at Extract, which I'm sure we'll get into. Just this like super interesting sandbox that I think will take this game super far into the future.
Well, do we even want to talk about the contrast between the world and the cosmetics? Because that's definitely something that they've brought over from, like, yes, not to the extent where the finals is this quirky
Mhm.
game show where people are wearing, multicolored, bright, like green with skirts and gremlin heads and cows on their backpacks. But still, even compared to the contrast of the world, it's not like it starkly contrasts anything previous to it. Both Tarkov and Delta Force definitely hard Milsim vibes. This one, you know, if you paid for the deluxe version of the game, you're a cowboy. Forget about it. If you want to, like, there's definitely some sort of space age feel to it. A lot of uh, what would you call it? A lot of helmets, a lot of aviator visors, but also, you know, they've done a lot with the cosmetics, but it also starkly contrasts the feeling of this dystopian society.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then going back to Matt's point, just talking about a little bit of like the uniqueness of the gameplay aspects from an arc standpoint, is in this game, you think like the number one thing that you'd fear would be other raiders and them trying to take your loot and kill you, right? But for me, in my experiences, some of the scariest thing have been some of these bigger arcs that can literally just take your life in two giant shots. You know, the Rocketeers, which can literally hunt you down super fast flying in the sky and hit you with two rockets, and there goes your light shield and HP bar. Same with the Queen. That thing has the ability to literally one-shot you with this laser. I think that's one of the coolest things is that instead of fearing an arc or a raider every single time, it has the ability to punish you so poorly for being in a bad position, you know, and just not thinking through what you're doing at all points in time. And I think that was like a really big difference than past games I played, especially just knowing how the extraction shooter genre works and how heavily dominant it's been from a player versus player standpoint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think what really works there is, again, going back to this idea of using robots and the Ark instead of humans, is I've watched a lot of Tarkov in the lead up to this game just because I was curious what we were gonna be, like, getting ourselves into, because I haven't really invested in this a ton, like, in the genre a ton. This is gonna be my first time. Um, and something that I noticed in Tarkov and these other games is, like, no one really teamed up to fight anything. Like, it just never happened. Like, you saw another player, you were shooting them, like, you were killing them. And then this kind of the same thing in these other games where, like, you would see someone shoot a boss or shoot a tough enemy, or the AI looked incredibly stupid, and they didn't really pose a real threat. And so it kind of devolved into PvP at the end of the day. And this genre is like built itself on being PvPvE, so player versus environment. But most of the games didn't really have a deadly environment. And Arc has leaned into making the environment incredibly deadly while also making the players incredibly deadly. So it actually creates this tension of like, do I want to solicit help from other people, or do I just go, nope, I'm rolling it on my own. All the other teams can suck it, and I'm the only one getting out of here.
Yeah, forget about it. Like I don't even if we're talking PvP, you can never forget about the E because I would rather solicit the help of the Arc than the other players when I'm having a PvP fight. You tell me I can bring in 5 lure grenades and I can throw lure grenades at them and have the Rocketeer that's about, 100 meters away go fight them for me? Absolutely. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, and, like, I think it's pretty crazy is, like, the things that you pick up on after playing a few runs and really getting immersed in it, you know, looking around and seeing these, scouts or those scanner bots that are going around and looking around for people, and you see them having the typical blue color, but the second you see it yellow and it's not on your team, you've automatically, like, gathered that it's looking for something, it's found something, you know, so all of a sudden you can pick up on that and use that to your own advantage, right? And so a lot of those things are little small things that they've done really well in this game. I feel like everything does its own particular role in the bigger world, and using that to your own advantage is something that really allows you to progress in this game further and make the difference between being completely unaware when you're running in the middle of an open field to knowing, oh, there's someone on the other side of this bridge looking down at me. I may want to second guess or find a different route about this. So I thought that was a really neat addition to the game.
So
Yeah.
tell me, have you guys run into any friendly players, or has it been like all PvP all the time for you?
I'll leave
I mean,
the friendly part to Virgo. I know that that's been his forte.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, also like, okay, for perspective for everybody, if anybody's played the game, I am only level 20 as of less than 24 hours ago. So I'm very early game, um, and spend a lot of time trying to just accomplish quests, going in solo. And especially in those solos matches, yeah, definitely have had a lot more cordial interactions, with people, than when I'm in my trio. If I meet a trio, I'm dead. Just forget about it. Um, but being a solo player, I think all of us are on the same page for the most part. I've been trying to find toasters for the better part of 7 days. We finally found some, but that's the most debilitating part is like, hey, I found a toaster. Hey, I jumped into the free loadout with the safe without a safe pocket, which generally my own fault. But you spend, the better part of because every match is 30 minutes. So you spend the better part of 30 minutes, you're down to 25 minutes, you found one singular toaster, and then you go try to extract, and then somebody, even though they have no idea what you have in your kit, are just like, "Hey, Imma go aggro. It's time to go. It's go time. I don't care if you have just fabric, I'm going for you." So, yeah, so there's the frustration there, but I think that's also part of the reward and payoff, because you have to have the good with the bad to know when the good is there, right? And so if that wasn't there, if it was just easy to extract every time and I could always get out with the loot that I found, it wouldn't feel as good when I do get out of a tough situation or when I do make a good play into an extract. So I mean, that's my perspective when we come to, like, the PvP versus PvE type of thing. Uh, like, yes, it's very easy to wanna say, "I only want PvE," but I think as what I've been hearing some people online are saying, it sounded like when they were building this game out in the first place, it was fully intended for PvE, but when they ended up only playing it that way, it was much more boring than they expected, so they added the PvP aspect to it. So and I tend to agree with them. I can see definitely where they could add a special event, but I think that might have to happen at something for them to calm the takes on it, for them to see how for players to see how the game dynamic would change, without PvP in it.
I
Yeah,
think I think it would be interesting to like put in a PvE only mode, but like cap the loot. Like, because I do understand why someone might be interested in something like Arc Raiders with like it's got a super interesting setting. The art style is really cool. You can tell they're leaning into this like retro future aesthetic. Um Obviously the whole internet's talking about it, so you're gonna need a lot of people want to check it out. And just generally there's a lot of friction that comes with extraction shooters. Like it's just you could lose a lot of effort and a lot of time really quickly. And that's kind of what makes it interesting, but also frustrating at times. Um, so, in my opinion, I think if they were going to add it, they should cap it at like either make like the enemies much weaker, uh, like so you could only fight up to say like I don't know, like leapers or the tier above leapers, whatever that might end up being, and then like also make the loot like if there's a 10% chance for purple items in a normal raid, make it like 1% in the PvE only mode. And so you kind of like suggest people that like, hey, if you're just getting off the ground, you want to get a feel for how the enemy AI fight, uh, try this mode. And then you realize that like, dang, all my buddies got all this cool stuff and I really want the cool stuff. Like maybe I should get the whole PvPvE thing an actual try and kind of encourage players that way without outright saying, uh, like you only have PvE, you only have PvP, or it's only PvPvE, and maybe that way they could breach the divide between the two parts of the community.
yeah, and I think that's one thing really worth noting is that if they really wanna get, like, a satisfying and really enjoyable moment, I think that having that PvP is what makes it really unique because, as I mentioned, the only one I haven't killed is the queen, and because of that, I was really close with a buddy of mine, and the biggest frustration was we're fighting the queen, me and my stack of 3, and we die to players that are only going after us instead of the common good of trying to take down this huge enemy, right? And I think that if we were all fighting it, it would have made for an awesome moment, right? A huge like PvP interaction that would have been great against the PvE. But that also makes it that much harder is that now you have people with other ambitions and other desires in their match, and that might be taking that loot off of you because 'cause they're like, "Oh, you must have really good stuff if you think you're taking on the queen," right? So, I think that's one of the frustrations what comes with it, but I also think it's one of the most rewarding things because similarly, if you were able to accomplish that and you were fighting 3 teams as you're fighting the queen and you got out of there alive, that's a story to tell. That is something that you can really live with and really enjoy and really bask in that moment, knowing that you just had like an absolute run right there and you made the most of it in every possible way. And I think that's the something that you can't replicate just fighting PvE alone, you know? And I think that's why that they should keep this PvP mode. And I do like this idea of having a little PvE mode off to the side with a little bit worse loot, as Matt said. So I completely agree with these guys.
I mean, I think like just to kind of wrap it up,
Mhm.
something that's also been really cool to see is I've seen a number of people say, I won't play this game if there's no PvE only to come up like a day or two later and be like,
Mhm.
I tried it and it's really fun. Like,
Yeah.
and that to me is like the sign of a great game. Uh, we've seen a ton of genre breakers this year where like people are like, I'm not really into this type of game, but like other people have been hyping it up and then they try it and they go like, holy crap. Yep, I get it now. Like I was a hater, like, and now they're like, "Yep, this is the one." And so that's been dope. And I give Embark a ton of credit for just sticking to their guns, feeling like they had something special, and just leaning into like what they knew they had.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you hit it on the head right.
glaze. Yeah, we can't glaze Embark too much because I could, but we'll say yes. Embark's done a great job this year, and at maybe another time we can go into things we'd like improvements on. But
I think, like, just to, like, really close on something that highlights just how unique and special this game is. Like, we saw Marathon come out with a ton of hype out the gate. People thought the art style was super cool. Bungie obviously carries a ton of weight when
Mhm.
it comes to shooters. And to see them do something new in one of their already established IPs, people were hyped. And ignoring the controversies, it's just very clear that Embark had a vision for their game. Even moving from PvE looter shooter to a PvPvE extraction shooter. Um, and they had this vision, and it's very clear from start to finish that this is what they want to do, and they're sticking to it. And when you juxtapose that against Marathon, which just kind of seems to be floundering and like it doesn't know what it wants to be, based on all the reporting and all the things that people have said from the various tech tests about whether or not it wants to be Destiny, whether or not it wants to be Halo, whether or not it wants to be Marathon, if it's an extraction shooter, all these things that have come out about it. And then you look at Arc Raiders and it's like, this is the package. You love it or hate it. But if you love it, the devs are going to commit to it and they're going to give you an awesome product. And I think they deserve a ton of credit for that.
agreed. Well, in the end, guys, these are just our takes on the game, but we do hope that with what we've given you today, you have enough information to decide if this game is a clutch or if this is just another click.